Geeks and geekettes, gats and gittens, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the College of Comic Book Knowledge, where I, your professor, your spirit guide, your inside man in the funny book business, gets to share little nuggets of intelligence, little bits of data from the bottomless well that I've dug over my decades writing comic books. Yes, this is Chuck Dixon back with you once again. And once again, I ask you very briefly, if you have not subscribed, subscribe. Those of you who have subscribed have made an incredible, massive, multitudinous difference to this little show of mine and increased our numbers by magnitudes. So thank you very, very much. Our first question is from Dark Nightwing. Chuck, would you ever be lead editor for Batman? The Batman story since Tom King took over have been hot garbage. We need better writing and editing. Well, I know this is you're trying to draw me out, get me to criticize, dump on another comic book writer. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to rise to the bait. I know if I did, I would have 100,000 followers. I would have 100,000 subscribers by now. But I won't do that. Okay. There's a line I will not cross. But would I ever want to be lead editor? No. Particularly now. I guess I could. I could work from home, as all DC editors do now. So maybe I would. Maybe I would take the job because I wouldn't have to relocate to Burbank. Many years ago, in the months before he retired, Denny O'Neil called me into the office. I was visiting. I visited DC all the time because I loved it. I loved working with those people. I loved their company. And he called me in the office. He said, I want to talk to you, just you and I. And he offered me the Batman group editorship. He said, the job's yours if you want it. And I said, Denny, I can't take the pay cut. And I can't afford to take a pay cut and move my family to the New York metropolitan area because it's so damn expensive to live here. In addition to being miserable and not being able to carry a gun. So he said he already knew that, but he didn't feel, he said he wouldn't have felt right if he didn't offer it to me because I was his first choice. And the world may wonder what would have happened if I had taken over that job. I'll tell you right now, I probably would have lasted a month, 2 months in that position. And I would have been gone. After all that pain and suffering and misery of moving my family to, some miserable, damp studio apartment in NoHo. If I could have afforded NoHo, I probably would have been out in Far Rockaway. I'd have to learn Russian. And so, yeah, I didn't consider it for a second. And I probably wouldn't consider it now. Once again, I can't take the pay cut. I would have to give up high-paying gigs to take the low-paying gig of being a comic book editor. So those days are past. Those jobs are for younger men who are willing to have lots of roommates. Okay, Brick Hard Slab. First, congratulations on your good news, Jason Statham. He's talking about the Levon Cade movie that's on the slate to go in production in next March. Okay, first, congratulations on your good news. Jason Statham projects hard-age toughness and is a skilled actor as well as a talented action star. Some have it, some don't. My only question is, has anyone brought up Levon's size versus Statham's? Many made the point that Cruise was a lot smaller than Reacher. Similarly, Statham is a lot smaller than Cade. Are you going to tailor future descriptions, traits, quirks of Cade to match? I think Fleming did something similar with Bond and Sean Connery, assuming, of course, Levon becomes a series of movies. Well, it is planned as a series of 3 movies. I signed a deal for 3 films. Sly and Mr. Statham really want to make this a franchise for Mr. Statham because he hasn't had a franchise of his own in a while. And I think he's a good fit. Size-wise, no, he's not as tall as I described Levon Cade, but I believe that Jack Reacher is described as, a weightlifter type, big, huge guy. So Tom Cruise was really miscast in that role because Tom Cruise is, while athletic, certainly is not a big guy. Cade, I describe as rangy. Uh, I do describe him as tall, but height is height's an amazing thing in movies. You can make someone look taller than they are. I mean, Tom Hardy as Bane looks enormous, although he's a peanut man, as is Christian Bale. They're not big guys, but the camera makes them big. So I'm not really worried about it. And I do agree with you that Jason Statham is an excellent action actor and an excellent actor. He's very good on screen. You can't take your eyes off him. He's quite a talent. So I'm happy to have him on board. I mean, I'm happy with the pedigree of this thing entirely. You've got Sly, you got Jason Statham, you've got the director whose name slips my mind at the moment, who I really like, David Ayer. And now, will I be changing the descriptions of Lee Von Cade? No. The books are the books, and the movies are the movies. They're to be enjoyed separately. Your example of James Bond is perfect because the Bond movies stand apart from the Bond novels stand apart from the movies. They have merits and things to recommend them all on their own, and should never be changed. Although I understand they are altering them for quote unquote modern audiences, which is, my God, that can't go on. I mean, they've tried to do this to Roald Dahl. They tried to do this to Mark Twain. It's not gonna. It can't happen. But in any case, no, I won't be altering his description to make him closer to Jason Statham. And I think you're wrong about Ian Fleming altering his description of Bond because Fleming never saw any of the Bond movies. He sadly died before Dr. No was released. So Mr. Fleming had no idea of the impact that the movies would have on pop culture globally. So he didn't alter the closest description that Fleming offers for James Bond, physical description, is from a secondary character in Moonraker, and she thinks that he resembles a Hoagie Carmichael, the singer-songwriter from the 40s, kind of a Hoagie Carmichael type with a dark side, which doesn't look anything like anybody who's played Bond. Oh, apparently Ian Fleming thought that Hoagie Carmichael was a very attractive man. But I won't be changing nothing against Hoagie Carmichael. He's perfectly, fine-looking guy, but not the kind of guy I picture having a license to kill. Although he's every bit as laid back as James Bond, and a dry wit. So Hoagie Carmichael, in case you're not familiar with, he wrote Stardust and Buttermilk Sky and a lot of classics in the 1940s. He also appears in the movie To Have and Have Not, really cool role. But yeah, I won't be changing anything to bring the novels in line with the movies. I mean, now I just finished the 12th novel, the first draft of the 12th novel, so I'm way too far into this to be changing what the character looks like. Ace Mowick, after your last video where you spoke about losing interest in Spidey after Ditko left, it reminded me of something that was said when I met Tom DeFalco at a con last year. When asking him questions, Tom got on the subject of not having read a single Spider-Man story since he left the title in the 90s. He expressed how he does that with any title he writes, because he thinks going forward, people will do things with the characters that he disagrees with. Doesn't want to waste his time being aggravated. Have you ever shared this perspective on any comics that you've worked on? Yeah, all of them. I don't read my books after I've left, unless they're written by somebody that I know. When Tony Bedard and Scott Beatty wrote arcs of Bane in various titles, I definitely read them and I enjoyed them. But I don't continue following titles religiously once I've left. It's kind of, I've described it as watching your children go off with their new dad after the divorce. You know, you don't want to be the guy with your face pressed against the window at McDonald's, you know, looking longingly at your own children, enjoying time with some stranger. So, so, um, so yeah, I mean, I just, you know, life goes on. I move on to other projects and the rest of it. I don't look back because it probably would be aggravating. It probably would be, boy, did they get this wrong. That doesn't mean that I don't look at other creators, what they've done with a character like Batman or, you know, Punisher. I certainly do. But once I've been on the character, I just have no desire to look back. I mean, when I was on Batman, I was collaborating with two other writers, and I read everything they did because I wanted to stay current with what they were doing with the continuity. And I liked Alan and Doug's writing. And I enjoyed that, knowing that I was part of this, that I was a piece of this puzzle every month. And also dealing with the animation guys, the guys that were doing Batman the animated series. It was pretty much concurrent with like Nightfall and things like that. And I really liked what they did. I watched every episode. Often, I think at least once an episode, I would say to myself, "Why didn't I think of that?" Because they were as into Batman as we were. They got the character. They understood all the nuances, and they understood the coolness factor of Batman to the same degree that, you know, Denny and the rest of us did, which was really cool. But following the stuff after I've left, no, I can't do it. Don't make me do it. Dwayne Thomas, your favorite live action Joker and why? Cesar Romero. I'm going to go back to Cesar Romero because he's the only Joker that made me laugh. So Romero's, not just because he's silly, but Romero had a great line delivery. You would never have thought, you know, this suave, cool, debonair kind of guy, always playing, you know, Latin romantic interests, you know, just the coolest guy in the room, would get so into playing a character this manic. And I really think that he used Frank Gorson's Riddler as a guideline for how far over the top you had to go to make an impression on this show. And I thought his body language, everything about him, the fact that he was a dancer, and he did have that, you know, that suave, debonair movie persona, and he's sort of making fun of that with his body language and the rest of it. And I remember there was a scene where he gets arrested, and he's being hauled off by the police, and he just shouts out, "Justice is blind," which isn't a funny line, but the way he delivered it with so much gusto, so much, you know, the Joker's feelings are hurt. He feels as though he's been unfairly maligned, and he shouts out, "Justice is blind." The delivery is fantastic, and I remember when I originally saw the episode, it made me laugh out loud. So he would be my favorite Joker, because to me, the Joker has to be funny, and no other screen Joker has been funny. Jack Nicholson wasn't really that funny. So often they write, you know, jokes, but yeah, the Joker tells jokes, but they feel like, oh, well, they're just jokes. They don't have to be funny. It's just he tells jokes because he's the Joker. No, he should be funny, and he should be even funnier when he doesn't mean to be, like when he is shouting out, "Justice is blind." You know, so, and also I like the way that in the 1966 Batman series, my favorite elements were, you know, Joker would always get his ass kicked, and he would always get humiliated by Batman. He would always get outwitted by Batman. And I've really never seen anything like that. I mean, Joker falling off of a high building in the '89 movie is not the comeuppance I would have expected for the Joker. Him being hauled away to prison, having been outsmarted, outmaneuvered by Batman, that's the greatest revenge you can get on the Joker, is to prove that he's not the smartest, the wittiest guy in the room. And same thing for the Nolan version and any future versions. And I've never seen Jared Leto, although I can't imagine he was very good as a Joker. So I don't know what those versions are like. But I'm going to stick with Senor Romero. even though he wouldn't shave his mustache off. Michael Scambati. Is that right? Did I get that right? Please say I got that right. I recently read your GCPD 4-issue miniseries from 1996. Just curious, did you plan for that to go on and on, like Gotham Central by Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker? No, I never wanted to do an ongoing about the Gotham City cops. Although I would have enjoyed it. I mean, if they had assigned me, if they said, look, we really need you to do this, I would have done it, and gleefully so. But I looked upon GCPD as a novel. And GCPD is very much my homage to Ed McBain. And if you read my Gotham City Cops, there's a lot of, kind of oblique references to Ed McBain's 87th Precinct paperback novels, which I just love them. They're just terrific police procedural mysteries, terrific characters. They're funny and suspenseful. If you've never read one, give one a try. They're available on Kindle for like 99 cents a piece. And I think there's almost 90 of them. He was writing like 3 of them a year there for a long time. And so GCPD was meant to be read as a novel, a miniseries read as a novel, a done in one story. If I were to do an ongoing, it would be more like Hill Street Blues or NYPD Blue kind of series. And I really wasn't interested in that. I was interested in done in one police procedural mysteries. And GCPD is not the only one that I worked on. I did a mini series called Gordon's Law with Klaus Janson, and Gordon's Law was very much my homage to James Ellroy. I was reading a lot of James Ellroy novels at the time, Blue Dahlia and L.A. Confidential, and his Lloyd Hopkins novels. And, I kind of had an itch to write that kind of story, a kind of dark story of police corruption and conspiracy. And Gordon's Law fit the bill, and Klaus is awesome on the artwork. I should say Jim Aparo and Bill Sienkiewicz, awesome on GCPD. What a combination. And Rodolfo DiMaggio and Sienkiewicz on the covers are killers. I love those covers. I own the originals for 2 of them. That's how much I love them. And there's also this one-shot. It's an extra-length one-shot called Bullock's Law by Flynn Henry, inked by Tom Palmer. And it's I think it's a 64-pager or a 48-pager, and it's a one-and-done cop thriller with Harvey Bullock that shows you a little bit more of his private life. What's Harvey like at home? So I wrote a few of these, and of course, in the course of writing Batman, did lots of police stuff, drawing in lots of police characters, and because that's, to me, that grounds the Batman series when you bring in the police department and portray them as realistically as you can in a comic book. I think it grounds Batman in reality when you do that, when there are real consequences, when there's a real in-place law enforcement with characters you recognize and procedures that are consistent. So anyway, glad you like GCPD. Try to check the others out. I think they're all collected in a single trade paperback, along with a Denny O'Neil miniseries about James Gordon. Ian Potash. I have a question regarding the Electrocutioner. You co-created Electrocutioner 3, but why was Electrocutioner 2 discarded? We saw the original Electrocutioner killed off, so Electrocutioner 2 was introduced by Marv Wolfman and Jim Aparo to revive the mantle. Oddly enough, this only resulted in a single appearance, with this Electrocutioner only being incarcerated at the end. Why was a new Electrocutioner introduced with the previous one still available? Well, as I've told you folks many times in these videos, DC Comics was a really weird place to work. It was the House of Secrets. And apparently Marv Wolfman and several other writers in the 70s got sweetheart deals that when they created characters, they would be the only ones who could write them. And no, I'm not, nothing against them. I mean, they were driving bargains. The companies were trying to keep talent, and they were offering these participation deals and sweetheart deals and secret handshake back room kind of things. And this was one of them. This was vaguely explained to me that I could not use Marv Wolfman's version of Electrocutioner because I wasn't Marv Wolfman. And again, I'm not being critical of Marv Wolfman, Len Wein, other writers. They got all they could out of DC as far as guarantees and stuff. I don't blame them. Writer's life is hard. Writers are paranoid. Writers never know when they're going to be out of work. And you want to know that there's something there for you. Little consideration, something for the effort. So I had to create a new Electrocutioner with a new secret identity and everything else. And he was Electrocutioner 3. And now why? Because I wrote a story with Marv's version, and they said I couldn't use him, but I'd already come up with the whole story, and it really, really relied on a character who can electrocute people. Because if you've read the story, the big shocker at the beginning, my very first issue of Detective I ever wrote, I kill Batman. Electrocutioner electrocutes Batman, stops his heart. And Robin is able to force the Electrocutioner to revive him. Basically shocking him again to bring him back to life. And it contains one of my favorite scenes, I think, which is in the next issue, in which Batman, even though he was dead for a while, a few minutes, insists on going right back out on the streets. Robin tries to argue him out of it, and Alfred says, there's no talking to this guy. I'm paraphrasing. There's no talking to this guy. He's just made a distinction between being clinically dead and biologically dead. Which is something I learned when I was a CPR instructor. So I got to use, you never know what you're going to use as a writer. So yeah, that's long story short, very long story. Boy, did I make that story long. That's why I had to create new Electrocutioner. And I created a new one rather than create a whole new Electro whatever character with his own name. But I do get participation in Electrocutioner too, because he is a new version of a character who can electrocute people. Terrence James. Is it a lot of fun working over at the Rippaverse with everyone else? Do you guys all have fun? We don't all live in the same house. You guys seem to be one pretty close-knit group and a good team. And, well, great dynamics like that always improves the work and how folks work. At least that's what I'd like to think. Yeah, we get along great. Eric is a very generous publisher, creator, entrepreneur, everything. He's the Stan Lee of the Rippaverse. He runs the show, but he's very generous with allowing all of us to play with his stuff. The Saska sisters are now on board. Mike Baron is now on board. And I've written 3 projects with him and planning a 4th probably right before the end of the year. And then Joe Bennett and I are cooking up something really cool for next year. So yeah, it's very encouraging. And I mean, that's just an example. I mean, Joe and I keep cooking up stuff for the Rippaverse. We're not just hired hands. We're welcomed in as collaborators, as part of this creative process, and have a lot of fun. Yeah, I've got to visit the facilities in Texas recently, and they have a lot of fun. It's a good crowd. It's a really great crowd of people. They made me feel very much at home as I spent an entire day signing, a couple of thousand comic books. But yeah, it's a good bunch, and they all like working together, and they all have mad respect for Eric and what he's doing. But Eric is he's a boss and he's an owner, but he's very much just one of the crew. He pitches in. He doesn't ask anybody to do anything that he won't do himself. So yeah, there's a good vibe there, a really good vibe. It reminded me in some ways of CrossGen because you had this close-knit group of people making it all work. But there the comparison ends because there was always some tension at CrossGen because Mark Alessi loved him like a brother, but boy, he liked that tension. He liked he liked letting everyone know he was the boss, and his way or the highway. It turned out to be the highway, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a good crowd. I liked visiting, and I will visit again because each time I do one of these books, I'm going to be flying out to Dallas Fort Worth to sign them. So I look forward to seeing these folks real soon. Terrence James again, do you enjoy anime or manga at all? And if you do like them, are you familiar with the countless different genres and types it has? As the saying goes, there's a manga out there for literally anyone, and anything you can think of, it's probably out there also. So many genres and types and themes and tropes, it goes on and on and on. Yeah, I've dealt with this subject before. In fact, my most watched video of all time, which I think is up like 30,000 views, is about manga and why manga was eating American comics lunch. I knew about Japanese comics because of the Japanese cartoons. Somewhere along the line, I read that these Astro Boy and Eighth Man and things like that were based on comic books. And of course, they were almost impossible to find. Whenever I knew anybody who was traveling to Hawaii, I would ask them if they could find me some Japanese comic books. And so my first views of these things were, these big telephone book size comics, the shonen comics, brought back like in the 70s. So I got to see what Japanese comic books look like. And of course, I was fascinated because I like everything about comic books. It wasn't until I started traveling up to New York, trying to get working in children's books and trying to get work in comics, that I found the Kinokuniya bookstore, which is right near Rockefeller Center and not that far from DC's offices. The Kinokuniya is like this huge Japanese bookstore and Japanese everything. It's got stationery, snacks, and all kinds of stuff imported from Japan. But the vast majority were books, and a large part of those books was manga. And I bought lots of stuff. Now, of course, they were all in Japanese, but I bought lots of series. The one I was attracted to most was Gargoyle 13, but I also bought Japanese editions of Astro Boy and other characters that I knew. And as manga began to take hold here in the United States, thanks to Dean Mullaney at Eclipse, he and Cat Ironwood were the first American comic book company to import manga to the United States and have it translated and well translated by people who were interested in the genre and familiar with each of the properties that they were adapting. So thanks to Dean and Cat, Americans were introduced to manga, and of course manga took hold because of the quality and, as you say, the variety. So so Gargoyle 13, eventually I was able to read a whole bunch of it in English. It's still one of my favorite series. I've got a lot of manga series that I like. And of course, Akira swept through the entire American comic book industry like a forest fire. Everybody was talking about Akira. Everybody was reading Akira. And of course, Marvel made a deal to publish it. Archie Goodwin editing and helping with the translations. And so it became an American phenomenon as well. And but I still read manga, Gunsmith Cats, Black Lagoon. I follow a bunch. The one I follow most loyally is Vinland Sagas. Just an awesome period Viking adventure story, which is not anything I ever thought manga would be capable of doing to a degree that I liked it. But I do. I love this. It's really accurate. I mean, it's manga style. It's Japanese comic art style. But even within that framework, even within that brand of the medium, it's a very accurate Viking adventure story that I really, really enjoy. Terrific characters. And a saga-like length that American comics don't seem to be able to do. And a lot of things that manga does, American comics can't seem to do, including, as you mentioned, the vast variety. If you like hockey, there's a hockey manga. If you like golf, there's probably 20 golf mangas. Baseball mangas, forget it. There's a bajillion of them. If you like quilting, there's probably a manga. Seriously. I'm not even joking. I would imagine there's a quilting manga out there. So if anybody finds it, please let me know. Terrence James again. Do you play video games at all, Chuck? And if so, what is your type? I game, but I play older games more than newer ones. I got a Nintendo 64 recently and loving the experience. And I went to the arcades and stuff when they first came out. I wasted my, share of quarters on Space Invaders and Missile Command and stuff like that. As far as home computer games, I, we were raising kids, and my wife and I, mostly my wife, made a decision that we would not have video games in the house because they were distracting, because she was homeschooling and she didn't want to have to compete with Nintendo and Atari and the rest of them, Sega. So we made a conscious decision not to have video games in the house. And I think it was a good one. We also didn't let the kids have cell phones until they could afford to buy them on their own. In other words, they had jobs, they were adults. And I think it was a good decision overall because of the way the kids turned out. That said, yeah, I got Call of Duty. I snuck it on my computer and I would play it every once in a while. Just the early versions of Call of Duty in World War II. The Russian Front was one of my favorites. Never thought the Russian Front could be so much fun, but I enjoyed that stuff. I don't play it anymore. I don't know where it is. I don't have it on my current computer. The only remaining game on my computer is so retro that you're all going to laugh at me. Caesar 3. It's from the 90s. Every once in a while, every few months, I will open it up and play a city. And it's a city building game, but I find it interesting because for a lot of reasons. I like the Roman Empire, and you build a city, and you have to defend it from barbarians. You have to defend. My favorite is defending it from angry emperors who get pissed off and try to take your city away from you. That's my favorite. But all the elements of a city building game. But for me, I've tried other city building games, and they don't seem as realistic to me, even though the graphics are better and the animation's amazing and everything else. They don't seem terribly realistic. They don't seem to be based in the real world. They just seem to be, just designed to reward you for participating, if you know what I mean. Just to get your endorphin levels up. It's like if you play solitaire on your phone, it's going to keep letting you win because it keeps wanting to show you commercials. And it wants to give you that hit where you're like, oh, I'm so smart. But you'd have to be, seriously incapacitated, a head injury, or drunk to lose a mobile game of solitaire. It's designed to let you win. Caesar 3 to me it's far more challenging. You can fail far many times than you can succeed, and the variables in the game, even though it's a really old game, I think it was a DOS game when it started out. I enjoy it. It's challenging. So laugh at me all you want, you crazy gamers, with your high res and your little consoles. Kenny Todd, do you remember when Wizard Magazine would do a thing called Casting Call? They would pick a comic and cast it. The reason I ask is that a couple of characters I always wanted to see back in the day was Jonah Hex, played by Clint Eastwood, after I watched The Outlaw Josie Wales, and Sergeant Rock, played by Bruce Willis. What do you think? I may have it wrong, but I wanted to put it out there. I actually read the screenplay meant for Bruce Willis to play Sergeant Rock, and it was really good. It's a shame it didn't get made. I think Willis would have been a perfect choice for Sergeant Rock. And the screenplay I read was good. It was a lot of fun, action packed. It was kind of a throwback World War II story where it had all the seriousness and death and destruction and all the rest of it, but it wasn't bleak and depressing. It was a World War II adventure movie, like they used to make in the 50s and 60s. And it's a shame it didn't get made. As far as Clint playing a comic book character, I don't think that would ever happen. He seems averse to comic books. He's not friendly to comic books the way Sylvester Stallone is. So I don't think that was ever going to happen. But good choice. Yeah, he would have been great. He would have been great. But you know, that's it. And generally, I don't like the casting call thing because fans will go, oh, that person can. I mean, there's a lot of going around about is it Pedro Pascal playing Reed Richards, and I'm like, that doesn't seem like a good fit to me, but he's an actor. Yeah, maybe he can pull it off. Maybe I'll love him as Reed Richards. I remember when Hugh Jackman was cast to play Wolverine, and all the fans were like, he's terrible, he's no good. And then, of course, as soon as the first X-Men movie came out, we love him. So, I tend not to judge these things until I see how they're made, the end result. And of course, which is getting riskier and riskier as the end results of many of these projects grow more and more disappointing. I mean, face it, we've all been let down a lot more than we've been delighted in recent years by comic book adaptation movies. So anyway, hey, Spin Rack is on Discord. Graham Nolan and I are there on Discord, and we've got a growing community of people who they don't even need to talk to Graham or I anymore. They're all talking to each other, sharing ideas, sharing projects, sharing artwork and script critiques and all kinds of stuff. But Graham and I are there if you want us. And here's a QR code, kids. You can scan this right off your TV screen or phone or wherever. Well, I don't know how you scan it off your phone. How do you do that? You see, this is how dumb I am about any of this stuff. But anyway, apparently, if you scan this, it'll take you right to Spin Rack Discord, and you can join the fun. So anyway, I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for listening and subscribing and liking and all the rest of it. And I will see all of you down the road.